Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I am super excited that I have a father-son duo on my show, Bob and Brendan Foley. So Bob Foley has enjoyed a career spanning more than 6 decades of innovation. After beginning his career at IBM in large systems and databases, he spent the past 3 decades helping advance breast cancer detection and breast imaging technology. As part of the founding team behind several landmark innovations in breast imaging, Bob helped bring to market the first FDA-approved AI for mammography, automated 3D breast ultrasound, and AI-assisted breast imaging technologies used by physicians and radiologists today for detection. Through his career, Bob has remained focused on a simple mission, helping find breast cancer earlier and improve outcomes for women. Today, that mission continues through his son, Brendan Foley. Brendan is the co-founder and president of Eve Wellness, the first direct-to-consumer breast screening clinic combining FDA-approved 3D breast ultrasound and AI technology. Drawing on his career in consumer experience, digital strategy, and retail innovation, Brendan founded Eve Wellness to make advanced breast screening more accessible, comfortable, and patient-centered. Using the same 3D ultrasound and AI technologies his father helped bring to market, Brendan and his team have screened thousands of women and helped identify dozens of cancers through early detection. Together, Bob and Brendan represent a unique full circle story. One helped build the technologies that transform breast imaging. The other is bringing those same technologies directly to women through Eve Wellness, united by a shared mission to help women find cancer earlier and save lives. Well, you guys are pretty impressive. How are you two today?
Oh, we're great. We're really
Doing
great.
well.
We're so wonderful to be here with you.
Well,
Thank you for that introduction. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you hear it read back, you're like, wow, we're kind of cool. And you are.
Yeah, who
and
are
you
those
are.
people?
And as you know, and that happens to me too. It's like, wait, I did all that? I'm what? But what's really cool is that we all had a conversation recently for a pre-interview. We had a nice conversation about a shared mission, even from my perspective, because I'm all about finding cancer early. And, we know that the earlier we detect these cancers, the better the outcome, the more treatment options there are. And so I'm just really thrilled that you reached out to me, found me, and wanted to interview on my podcast because I think this is really critical, important information.
We're happy the internet led us together and we made that connection some time ago.
So, Brendan, I want to ask you first, what inspired you to co-found Eve Wellness and what problem were you hoping to solve?
It's a really great question. And obviously, I think one thing that, and you touched on in the intro, was I've been kind of sitting like in a family kind of living room, dining room, whatever you might want to call it, for my entire life, watching my father do this innovation in this space. And it was kind of coming full circle for me in about 2022 when we launched our flagship here in San Francisco. But I think a lot of that history was already ingrained into my DNA to kind of build something better for women when it got to like earlier detection. I was seeing at a very young age in college scanning mammogram films and seeing early cancer that could have been detected, but that went missed using some of the early ad that they developed as watching these people get together in a living room, write a business plan. So I kind of felt the entrepreneur was in me. It was just not like what inspired. It was like, when was it going to happen for me? When was I going to take some innovation that I saw can make a huge difference and bring it forward? So my co-founder and I, who's for him, his wife always has dense tissue letters coming back, had a lot of questions. He knows my father. So just the three of us were kind of ruminating on what could make sense. And so my co-founder and I just kind of put our toes in the water, as they would say, and really wanted to find, from our retail experience and bringing together that forward, like, how can I build something more accessible that could be comfortable, that could actually show really proven results for equipment that is not super accessible in today's hospital environment. And it wasn't like taking something brand new and things like that. It was trying to change the way we looked at imaging and providing solutions for women really of all ages, and providing solutions for women in their 20s up until they're, beyond the screening age. So it's just important to do that.
I'm really curious. This kind of popped in my head is that lately I've been interviewing male breast cancer survivors, and I never knew that men could get breast cancer. I mean, so because you started so young in this space, how much did you know about that? If anything.
For males. Yeah, you know what? It was something I learned. It was a learning experience. And actually, it's been also a really nice learning experience to learn from about 20 men that have come in through our clinic to do screening, which, you kind of start looking at the stats and you start looking at the diagnosis on an annual basis. I mean, there are 600 men that will, die of breast cancer this year. And I think it's roughly about 3,000 men will be diagnosed. And so it was a space that, I wasn't too familiar with, because I think a lot of the literature and what we learn is really geared towards, women and that side of it. But it was also something I know that our service could be so helpful. And we work with a lot of great concierge doctors here in San Francisco, as we're such a very progressive city, that providing screening for many different people is a wonderful solution. And our comfortable screening at Eve, it just makes it just, easily glide across any breast tissue. So.
Yeah, definitely. I just find it so fascinating that most people don't even know that. And now we patient advocates and medical providers who know this are using our big mouths to let people know what is possible out there. And I just, that's why, part of what I do includes men. I want them to feel as welcome as women, even though the statistics aren't as high. But having a place like Eve, it must be so comforting for them to be able to go in there, because it's not just about women and it's more comfortable for them. So gosh, thank you for doing that. So Bob, I would love to hear you share a little bit about your family history in breast imaging innovation and how that influenced your vision, because you were doing something different. Where did all of this change? How did you get to where you are, Bob?
The previous question you asked is very interesting, because in the late 70s, early 80s, I had a fellow work for me that had breast cancer. Oh. He was in his 20s. But that wasn't the genesis. In IBM, I was always working in large systems. The last 10 years, I was in IBM research, looking at new technologies. And I had a chance both to look at healthcare, that was my major focus, as well as AI. And we had been doing some work in AI at IBM in the 80s. And what happened was in the transition from large language models doing contractual, changes in contracts, redlining and so on with AI, we said, why don't we look at imaging? Because it's a totally different space. And that was the genesis of getting involved in this breast cancer. And we never built it from ground up. We always look at research that's gone on and where's the potential. And in this case, there was some major work done at University of Chicago where they used computers to analyze mammograms. And they said, we can find 55% of the mammograms. We can identify the cancer. And that is the genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, we can improve on that. And that's when we started R2 technology. It was purely for mammograms. We could find cancers earlier. We actually went through an extensive study, FDA approval, and this was the 90s. In film-based, we weren't even at the digital level yet. And that's the story with Brendan. Brendan, he basically worked third shift, digitizing mammograms so we could bring the results back to the radiologist to read the next morning. So that was his baptism by fire.
Yeah, homework, his education. Yeah.
And by the way, your third shift, and you have to get these back to the radiologist read by 7:00 tomorrow morning.
I had the 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
And yeah, I remember when I was diagnosed, my breast radiologist is a friend of ours, and he was at my retirement party 3 days before my mammogram that I went into. And he was able to call me that night at 6:30 to tell me that it was most likely breast cancer. And I was like, God, that was fast. And so, that's a big job, Brendan. I would think, you're the one that's like reading this and seeing that someone might have breast cancer and then of course having to let them know. That must be hard.
Yeah. No, it was, and there were some, during the R2 days, we were doing a lot of helping build that initial algorithm, and we were having cases and partnerships with the Susan Komen Center, and we had films, that we were reading that were being able to be picked up on the earlier stages, first when the jacket was already deceased.
And that was the result. Basically, we were still at the film level, but we went to we did a very extensive study, 10,000. We had to collect 10,000 cases from various locations. And the objective was, can I identify the cancers earlier? So you, like yourself, you had a diagnostic. They said, we looks troublesome. We might have to do a workup. That's exactly where we were. But we said, let's go back to the prior year mammogram to see if we can see anything. And that was the critical factor. So the FDA approved us. We identified 20% of the cancers a year earlier than they were actually discovered. So that was really, it's now standard of care. Everything gets R2 checked. So, but in doing that, we also looked at why do we miss those cancers and what can we see that we've missed in the diagnostic. And indeed, that's when actually we discovered, we said breast density is a major factor. And this was 1998. So then it started another process, another decade. And then we created, we need this 3D ultrasound. We cannot be satisfied with looking at areas where the radiologist tells me, why don't you get an image here or there or there? So the full breast was really the breakthrough. And that was another 10 years, 15,000 patient study, found cancers not visible in mammography. But that's the upside. The downside was you now have 2,000 images of a woman's breasts. You're not going to read them like you read 4 images for mammograms. So even though we got approval for that, which we knew was needed because of breast ultrasound, be able to look through the mammograms, we said we definitely need AI. So the story is really an AI story, because there's no way that breast ultrasound is going to be accepted as a screening modality if I, the radiologist, have to read through 2,000 images for every patient. So that's the solution was AI. So here's another 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, there's your 30-year, progression. So you're left with that unanswered question. What do I do now? You have dense breasts. So, and that's where basically breast ultrasound is much more effective in looking at dense breasts. And secondly, Brendan's, Eve Wellness is trying to drive that to the public.
I love that. Yeah, that makes sense. In about 2009, I was 41. So that would make sense that probably not until about 2015 or 16, I was finally told, and I'm in Nevada. So, and then of course in 2022, when I got the breast cancer, that is the time when I started hearing that by law that they had to tell you, because I was diagnosed in 2022. And less than a year before, I had my mammogram and ultrasound, and they didn't find anything. So mine was obviously pretty aggressive and fast growing. And because by the time, because I accidentally found mine, and it was a big enough tumor that because I found the lump. But it was interesting that they detected nothing that June before. So with the Eve Wellness, is that changing things? You're able to see more on the imaging?
You know what? And I think it goes to back what my father was talking about, the importance of the 3D modeling, the importance of taking the 2,000 images, the importance of seeing what we consider whole breast ultrasound. And again, the diagnostic ultrasound is great if it's directed in the right place and it can really cover everything. But there's something about, taking that whole imaging, and really great thing with the product that they developed, which then eventually was acquired by GE, and it's the GE Healthcare's product called the automated breast ultrasound, ABUS, as they call it. It takes a reproducible image. So what's important about that is that you can look at prior films on all your patients, which is important for doing what you would consider surveillance or see anything changing throughout that. But again, that's a difference. What makes that whole breast 3D modeling so important, because now the doctors can look at it from a coronal view, looking from down on literally on top, seeing the nipple and around. And then you can dive into the ultrasound views as well. That could be really helpful which I know for a lot of our patients has been extremely helpful to see through, again, the density. And the density is just prevalent in anybody. It's okay. It's like every woman really does have dense tissue. We can see more clearly on some imaging and very less clearly on the other imaging. So
I didn't discount AI because it's so important, but I just live it, so I kind of lose myself in that. But the key thing we did with the 3D ultrasound, first of all, we proved, and this is again the FDA said, okay, if you look at the results of the algorithm first, you can improve your reading time substantially. So that was one of the objectives of the study. Not only do we operate less, we have no less diagnostic accuracy, but we can get you to read them faster. That was the initial study we did. But going forward, we've moved the sensitivity, which means how many cancers are you finding? The sensitivity went from 78% to 93%. So we identify we really at the top-notch performance of finding the cancers. And we did the similar thing for mammography, but mammography had a top end, obviously, with the dense tissue. You can't see it, so you can't identify it. I call it AI for good, because a lot of AI is getting,
Yes.
bad rep. In medical imaging, where we have this large model we can test against, I call it the large imaging model as opposed to the large language model. I mean, words have been around for centuries, right? Imaging hasn't been. So to get all that data, which a lot of which is protected, and we have to go through very rigorous disciplines to get that data, especially in the imaging world.
It's such a double-edged sword, because really we do see some really crazy things happening with AI right now, but I am so grateful for it in the medical space. So, okay, so what I really would like to do, Brendan, is to ask you, why did you choose a direct-to-consumer spa-like screening model like I would love to have in our area? And how does that help make screening more approachable? And we touched on it a little bit, when we were talking about men, but let's talk about the whole approachable model that you have created.
Yeah, no, I think, it starts with just like you want to make any sort of screening less intimidating and less anxiety driven. And the idea with Eve, and just any, again, back to the idea was, how do you make that comfortable experience? So I want to leave anxiety or any sort of like hesitation to do any screening outside the door. I want you to come in and feel, like we're seeing you, we're here to help you, we're here just to provide you a really comfortable experience. And the technology has already done that by providing like a more of a lay down approach on the bed, allowing the machine to glide over the breast tissue. I think one of our technicians says it's almost like a jade roller. I personally have done it just to kind of highlight for my friends for my birthday. I'll kind of get on and do a screening and say, look, this is very comfortable. And we get thousands of, simple requests from our patients saying it's a lot better than what I experienced up the hill at the mammography center. And obviously from a compression side, not going to say there's not zero compression, but there is still a little light compression. But the idea was to make it convenient also. And that was an important piece too. A lot of screening for women that are eligible don't actually go do screening. I think it's about 60% of women eligible don't actually do annual screenings.
Really?
So there's a massive gap. Yeah, there's a massive gap in doing just screening, especially since we're making it available for women 40 and over. So we wanted to build our clinics to be right where women are and meet them in their day-to-day activities, right? So we're nestled into in a beautiful city like San Francisco. We're nestled into a beautiful neighborhood district near your local coffee shops and your beautiful Pilates studios, whatever you might want to be doing from your day-to-day. So you're eliminating that inconvenient part of driving across town to go to the hospital and kind of go into an environment that might feel very, level of anxiety go up based on, what you might just visually, digest. Could be the person on the gurney, whoever, you never know. But the idea that you want to kind of create this beautiful experience to walk in. So yeah, it was kind of putting women first in our clinic, building a clinic that felt built for them. I have a wonderful interior decorator. She's called my mother. So my mom was able to do that. But we also sourced local artists to come in and do mural work in there. And so every clinic has this local touch to kind of the culture that is of San Francisco. And then as we continue to expand our clinics, we'll just want to work with the local community too to kind of build that comfortable experience.
And do you have oils diffusing and hot towels and things like that?
We do have warm robes and we give you cozy slippers. So every patient loves the idea. We have the calming spa music. We have the sparkling waters. We do have some beautiful candles that we have for our little for sale section, some just really beautiful spa-like material. But yeah, we wanted to make it just feel like you're there for 20 minutes and we wanted you to kind of come in, leave, check that off your list, provide that peace of mind. And for a lot of women, it's really, they've appreciated the experience. I think our Google reviews will say, you have over 200 5-star reviews for a breast screening clinic. I think you might be doing something right. I don't know who's super encouraged to let me go write a review for that breast cancer screening I did. But that's been wonderful to see the reactions. And then also we wanted to be really authentic and authentic in the way we're looking at pricing, transparent, right? It was all about a flat fee. We're not here to kind of dive in. So I think that's another thing that, led us to do the direct to consumer to make it feel so more comfortable, is that we're seeing medical, procedures and our day-to-day preventative screening or preventative measurements, go direct to consumers. We can look at the pre-nuvos. We can look at, the full body MRIs, the DEXA scans. We're almost as consumers looking for answers, and we want them now. And so providing a consumer-based model was great. And also, unfortunately, our insurance system is not perfect. And I think that's another reason to go direct to consumers, is allowed us to really allow patients to come in and pay, just a flat fee with us, which to us, we wanted to price somewhat affordably. It's just $350 for our screening, but that's, providing your AI, that's providing the whole breast, that's providing, our doctor getting results back in 24 to 48 hours. And eventually I think we'll get there from an insurance standpoint, but that's going to take even more legislation, which I continue to work on with a few groups, the Find It Early Act, and things like that can be more transparent in the overall insurance opportunities. But how do we provide, that quick, that easy booking, be comfortable, and then go do a Pilates class or go get your cup of coffee around the corner.
Go get your nails done.
Go get your nails done. We've had some fun sipping stands where people have come in with their group of 6, 7 girlfriends that all wanted to do their screening together, and they kind of just sat in our beautiful lobby and just wanted to kind of bring that environment there. So is the more you can kind of downplay the idea of it's a screening, and really kind of make that comfortable setting, the anxiety kind of leaves. And I think that was the vision for really just making it a comfortable, beautiful experience for women.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that. I think the name is appropriate. Eve, to bring in the family. So we're talking about what should they call the clinic. So
that's true.
Judy, his mother, my wife, said, call it Eve, and then to add to that, it's really wellness. I mean, if you look at the statistics,
it is.
You don't want to be the one with, but 1 out of 1,000. I mean, that's basically, your breast cancer probability. So you could say 1 in 1,000 is never going to be me. Well, you can't say that. So it's really a wellness check. You want to be the 999 that come out of there. But if something is found, then you're going to find it earlier. And that's the key element.
And that's the whole mission that Test Those Breasts is all about. It's find it early, change the outcome. And because that there's such a critical gap in education. I never learned about breast health when I was younger. And, I would go into my gynecologist and she would do a breast exam, but even she did not do breast exams the way that you're supposed to do breast exams. And what's happening is that no matter what age you are, 20s, 30s, 40s, or my age when I was 54, we're learning all of this stuff when we've already been diagnosed. And I want to make sure that people are learning these things before they are diagnosed, knowing what to look for, looking for the 12 signs of breast cancer. And, knowing what your risk factor is, knowing what dense breast tissue is and why it matters. And so that's my whole mission. And I'm wanting to make a big impact here. And I would love to be able to bring a spa like, place like that to here, because one of the questions I was going to ask you next was, what are the barriers that we're seeing in, especially young folks, taking care of their body, paying attention to that wellness that Bob was just talking about? What are the barriers that you're seeing? And I think that, just to preface this by saying, you have all of those Google reviews. There's something being done right. And so you are finding that more and more women are coming in. And do they know why it's so important?
Yeah, and I think that's, you're touching on the barriers. And I think today we've always found a barrier just to be the screening age in general. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're seeing is that younger women, because our data shows that, 34% of the patients that have come into our clinic have been under the age of 40. They're the hand raisers. They're the ones asking for more information. They're the one knowing that being more preventative can help, better my wellness. I think it's a combination of where we are, again, back to how a lot more of these companies are going direct to consumers. In the idea of like preventative medicine, we're seeing it from the blood testing as well, too, where you can really just order full panels from companies like Function Health or Superpower, mm-hmm. and really kind of see more stuff than you normally get from your annual physical. Mm-hmm. But I do think, you touched on how you had to raise your hand and really be an advocate for more screening. What we're seeing is that younger women are coming in to ask those questions too. And I think that's been really beautiful to see, because I'm really encouraged with that proactive approach to screening. I do think that, even by moving the screening age down to 40 recently from 50, we really did, I don't know, too much of a, service to, multiple levels, because more density came into the population and it might draw more confusion, because we're going to provide now where, we brought younger women in, which 75% of women under 50 have dense tissue. You're now going to get more questions for doing other screening, mm-hmm. And things like that. So I do think it's been the biggest, the barrier seems to be always been the traditional message of like, you're too young. Mm-hmm. And wait till you're 40. And the amount of times I hear that from our 30-year-olds, that's always been the case, and it's been told you're too young. And I think that's where we're seeing a huge shift in how we are taking more control. I mean, I said to a patient once, it's almost you have to be the CEO of your own health. Mm-hmm. And this is where we're at. And, we can try to use as much of the healthcare system as we can today, but there's going to be opportunities for us to find other options out there. And Eve is really trying to lead that forward for a lot of younger women, and also women with dense tissue, but also just providing that quick, as my father said, just that wellness validation for a lot of our patients.
Yeah, and women in general, they're the ones who are the referrals. They're the ones who talk. They're the ones who tell their friends what they're doing, and people listen to women. And so that's why I'm trying to have that effect here in our own community, to get people to be the CEO of their own body and understand that I have interviewed so many survivors that were in their 20s and 30s, and they were blown away that they were even diagnosed, and that their doctor were even saying, oh no, you're too young, wait until you're 40. And then it turned out that they were even metastatic when they were finally diagnosed.
Yeah, and so yeah, you bring up it was interesting when you said what, 54 you were diagnosed?
Yes.
Okay, the two major studies that always is cited The one study we did, the 15,000 patient study, the median age was 54.
Okay.
One of the earliest studies that was done in 2002, the median age was 53. In our study, only 4% of the people were less than 40. And they came in as asymptomatic dense breast because they didn't qualify for insurance. So we're going through, the institutions trying to get the data. So yeah, but now fast forward to where Eve Wellness is, their data contradicts everything or reinforces the need to look at under 50 and under 40 because of the breast density.
Okay, so Bob, why are we seeing so many women in their 20s and 30s being diagnosed?
I think one, they're being more proactive. Two, I think there are some risk assessments being done. The BRCA1, which is high probability of cancer, is being done for people in their 20s. If people have parents or relatives that have BRCA1, then they usually get risk assessment and do screening. So there's no definitive, it's not genetics, even though I cited that. That's only 15% of the cancer. So 85%, is it environmental? Is it ideal in other diseases? I'll cite one. So my family has Huntington's disease. I don't know if you're familiar with Huntington's, but
I've heard of it.
yeah, it's a gene. It's a flip of the coin. You either get it or you don't get it. It's passed over from the parents. Okay. If you have it, it's incurable, still incurable. And then so I grew up with that. My dad was I was 15 years old when he passed away after 10 years of the disease. He was a school teacher too, by the way. So,
good guy.
Yeah, great guy. But you look at that and you look at breast cancer, if we catch it earlier, I won't say it's curable, but 99% of it's in remission. You're a breast cancer survivor, so it's such a beautiful thing to be able to cure this thing or to be able to put it in remission. And the amazing thing that if there's a well-known breast ultrasound sonographer or radiologist, Tom Stavros, he said there's no better way. He loves to look at the images in a quiet room to make sure he gets through all of it. He said there's no better imaging modality to find cancers less than 2 centimeters where I can do a surgical excision and maybe no chemo is required. That's where you want to be.
Yes,
and the awareness is the issue right now because there's so much conflict in the messaging. So, you have breast density. Well, okay, doctor, what do I do next? Well, just come back next year for your mammogram. But no, that doesn't work. It's limited. So, yeah.
There's a lot of disinformation out there, misinformation. I say disinformation because I think that some of it's purposeful, but even I hear a lot about mammograms, and I think we may have touched on this during our pre-interview. People saying that mammograms cause cancer. And so we're like a bunch of us out there are trying to combat that. What are your thoughts on that, Brendan or Bob?
Well, I think there's only what I consider, ultrasound, the universal imaging modality, does everything with no risk, right? Mammograms, still they have radiation associated with them. So you'll hear some comments, well, it's like flying across country on an airplane, same radiation. Well, your radiation across country is your whole body, right? This one's focused right on your breast. So is that more intense? I don't know the answer to that, but radiation has a risk, and it might be a necessary risk, for mammograms, for CT scans and so on, to do very detailed diagnostics. But, the question remains, radiation is a risk.
Well, one of the things, Bob, that the reason I asked that is because a radiologist that I spoke to recently, she said, everything has radiation. I mean, we're exposed to radiation all the time. She says, but the question is, if mammograms are causing cancer, how is that possible for these women in their 20s and 30s when they've never had a mammogram?
Yeah, and I think that the idea of like just radiation everywhere, I think that's very well defined. And I think the question you're getting to, which I think I hear in the clinic from the patients, is that by getting the mammogram, the squeezing, it's pushing the cancer all over my breast. That's why the mammogram causes cancer, and that's not true. In that respect, that the mammogram is giving you cancer. I think what is going, what goes missed is the cancers that the mammogram misses on. And that's how we're finding it. That's how the ultrasound is seeing through it. So I think it's more of like, again, the technique in the screening, the imaging of, that it's going to squish the cancers. I hear sometimes people ask about biopsies, and if I poke the cancer, it goes everywhere in the biopsy. And I've talked to our doctor before, and because I get a lot of these questions, and I'm not one to professionally say, but I'm like, that's not accurate either. There's a lot of data to say that doesn't happen. Now, is there one-off cases that get proliferated? Maybe, but again, I don't think we have really concrete data on that. But I do think with the mammogram, it's more of missing the cancer in the mammogram, which we know 50% of cancers can go missed in the dense tissue, that we're not seeing it. But to that point, it's a very valid point that radiologist said, was like, well, if they're in their 20s and 30s and never had a mammogram, then how is the mammogram causing the cancer? And then it gets to like what my father was saying, is like, we're doing so much better with risk assessments. We're doing so much better about early preventative screening. One of the things we like to really encourage is, get one comfortable with screening. I think that's what Eve has been able to do is, if you sat around the dinner table, maybe as a 20 and 30-year-old, and you had visions of what your mother or grandmothers or sisters or aunts were talking about, like, oh, it hurts so bad, I never want to do it again. Well, let's bring a different way of looking at screening to get comfortable. We're still, if we find something in our clinic, we are going to still recommend a diagnostic mammogram. So, we are still doing the proper follow-up because it's what we do when we find something. But the idea that, set your baseline at 20s and 30s, using ultrasound, as my father said, there's no risk of doing the ultrasound. And again, getting back to what we're really trying to discover is that earlier side of cancer, the earlier side, find it before you feel it. The whole idea of what we really are mission driven on at Eve was the ultrasound could really help identify those things. And there's definitely imaging that the mammography does pick up in microcalcifications, and that could be a whole other topic some other time. But I mean, that's something that that mammography will pick up on, and those are things that are heavily debated on on the outcomes of DCIS, and especially in microcalcifications.
Right.
And maybe my father can speak to that a little bit further.
No, but
I don't think it's just not.
I do want to make a comment on, the environment. I mean, we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. That's what she
I'm
said
also
too.
Dealing with Parkinson's, and Parkinson's is 80, again, it's almost the same. 15% can be attributable to the DNA and the genes. 85% they feel is environmental in Parkinson's. So, it could be environmental, it could be diet, could be whatever. Why are you getting breast cancer early? There's not a good answer for that. It's a lot of unknown.
Well, yeah.
You want to get it and treat it.
When I was diagnosed, I had a lot of people saying things like, "Oh my God, Jamie, but you were so healthy." And I'm like, I am healthy. like I was healthy, but yeah. And so there's this misunderstanding that healthy people can't get cancer. And of course, that's not true, but there's other kinds of, environmental issues. And mine was not hereditary. Or anything like that. But so I want to wrap up with a couple of questions. One being that education piece, Brendan. What do you send anything home with people to help educate them on the signs of breast cancer going forward, for that next year, like what to look for, or some of their risk factors that they might, pay attention to?
Yeah, our team and our technicians, the beautiful thing is that when you're sitting there with somebody for 20 minutes, you're really educating them on what we're doing in the screening process and showing kind of like the imaging and what they can see. But our technicians are always talking to our patients about their risk assessments. We do a risk assessment on each patient when they come in. So they're leaving in their report understanding their risk assessment. One of the things we do offer at the clinic too is genetic testing too. So we use a product that's it's called Ambry, but what it does is test for multiple different genetic genes.
That's what I had.
From a saliva-based thing, which is wonderful because it gives women an understanding of those risks. But then, our recommendation is majority of just keep doing your self-exams. What I always like to tell women is if something really, one, know your density, and we're educating them on that. Know your history. They're doing the risk assessment. They're learning their percentages possibly there. Also, if you feel something is not right, we're always encouraging to look at different color nipple changes or any sort of discharge or feeling soreness, because we do get a good amount of symptomatic patients into the clinic that are I'm feeling some breast pain, here and there. And then you understand where they might be in their cycle. It could be something like changing hormonally, where they're going to be finding bumps and lumps, in which, again, we're going to tell them it's nothing of concern, or if it is, we're going to help them out. But we are leaving a lot of our patients with that feeling of you got the results back quick, which is important. Getting the results back in 24 to 48 hours, like you said, that's where a lot of that kind of longer anxiety can linger on not getting your results back soon enough. So we do try to educate them, and then we just encourage come back in for your annual screenings again. But we also are very, I think, once again, you feel like you're in a spa. Why wouldn't you want to come back again?
Right. I want to go. I want to come and visit now. I want to see what this place
for you to come down to San Francisco.
Well, when I do get down there, I will be looking you up. So
you're first on the list. You're first on the list.
Do you have any stories like one story that sticks out to you the most that has impacted someone deeply by coming into Eve Wellness or may have impacted you deeply?
Yeah, I think, starter, every patient that's come into Eve has been, just we treat everybody with that 5-star approach we would want to be treated with. And so I think every patient is so special to us, men and women, the men as well. The one that comes to mind, and she's on our website, so I encourage people to kind of look at the website. But her name was Jenna, and she felt a lump, and we just opened the clinic, and just was about 4 months into being in existence, and early 23, and she saw, we were right there on the main drag, and she saw the signage of breast screening clinic, and she was under 40. I think she was 37 at the time. And she came in feeling a lump, and she felt it in the shower or a self-exam at home. And we were convenient. We were right in the neighborhood. And it kind of started proving a little bit of why I built this clinic where it was and how I'll continue to build them. And she got a phone call about 4 hours later from our doctor. And our doctor said, we've looked at the imaging, and this is something we need to kind of get working on. And that's very common for, our doctor will call all our patients that might need additional imaging. She was able to be seen a week later up at the Sutter Hospital here in San Francisco. They confirmed the imaging that we saw. They confirmed it with a biopsy. And then about a month later, she had a double mastectomy. It was stage 3 cancer. And, she says even having all that data information was so critical and so important for her to take those next steps faster, to kind of get through that process, because that initial screening that we did helped inform her doctors. And those are doctors I got to know through opening the clinic. That was critical for me to find referring clinics here in the Bay Area. We work with all the major clinics here, but it was important to build those relationships early on, because those are the people that are going to be taking care of our patients. And I need to have that trust on, their side of the equation as well. So it was fast forward, probably right before Christmas, in between the Thanksgiving and holiday Christmas timeframe. And I was walking down the street here on a Saturday evening, and she saw me with her husband and came up and said, I gotta really tell you something. It was the first time I got to travel. And we went back to somewhere back east for the holidays. And we went around the table at Thanksgiving and we shared everything we're thankful for. And I just need to tell you this personally, that I said only a few words, and it was only that I'm so thankful for Eve Wellness to be a clinic that you opened up. And right there, the 30 years of watching my father build all these technologies and seeing the impact it's had, I don't even know how many thousands of stories that have touched the R2, the U systems, to the AI that we use as well. That moment right there knew that this mission that we started, my friend and I, that it's paying dividends in more ways than you can ever imagine. And I've had a wonderful career working for amazing companies and really doing some stuff that's been really innovative in the advertising marketing space and launching stuff. But this has probably been the most rewarding work of my career I've ever done. And I'm only 3.5, 4 years into this. And it's been such a full circle moment to see, things that can make a difference that I knew were so many barriers for so many people. It felt like. And so for Jenna, we built this company and this opportunity to provide this screening for women like Jenna. There's another woman named Anisha on our website. We have seen thousands of patients and we've discovered cancers, and we are discovering cancers earlier and finding them on the earlier stages as well, and really being, something that, again, I feel blessed sometimes to just like have somebody that I've, been able to understudy my father, and who's my mentor and my hero in this world, just to kind of take his technologies and put it to life. I mean, it's just truly a blessing, and I'm just grateful for people like you to help us share the story, but also like our patients, because we love our patients.
Yeah. Well, one, you made me cry with that story. Thanks. And two, Bob, you must be so proud of Brendan, just to kind of see this work moving forward. And there was a third, but I really am excited that you all are out there. I'm going to ask the same question to both of you before we wrap up today. Bob, what gives you the most hope about the future of breast cancer screening prevention?
Well, we still have some ways to go, but one is on prevention. It's got to be some type of imaging, because the risk assessment, and there's even, now they're looking at tissue characteristics to predict the probability of risk. I work with some of the radiologists that are doing that, which is fine, but it's just like you have to feel it. Well, you don't want to feel it, but the risk is one thing, but you have to image to see if when's the risk rate real. And that's, to me, that's ultrasound. MRI does some good work, but that also overtreats, overdiagnoses, and sensitivity is false positives. So we have to get better. And when I say AI does not stand alone. AI is an assist for the radiologist to give them confidence. Oh, I've never seen one like this before, but you circled it. I better, do something about it. So better diagnostic capability, better screening capability with AI assistance. I think in the risk assessment, I think will help, but you still have to do the imaging. So how do you? Okay, my risk is low. Well, is it really that low? I mean, can I image with ultrasound? Can I do something to identify a better characteristic of what my risk is? So a lot to be done. I'm in the heyday. I'm not in the heydays anymore, but I think 3 decades I've moved it along. We've moved it along, but we have a lot more to do.
Well, thank you very much for all that you have done. I think that we're all very lucky to have someone like you out there who kind of was a trailblazer. And then, Brendan, what about you? What gives you the most hope?
I think I think when I look at how this one clinic opened up and what we saw from initial numbers of younger women coming into the clinic to be more preventative, I think we're seeing a greater awareness in the public media about breast cancer. We're seeing a larger awareness of breast density. So what gives me hope is that we continue to keep pushing from a mountaintop in a billboard as loud as we can. Look, this is a very treatable disease if we can catch it early and we can understand some of the risks that are out there and know those risks. It gives me hope too, working with people in the DC area that are telling me that we do have support within both bipartisan on trying to push laws further along the line. So that is helpful. That if it's getting to the people that can also help legislate change, that's going to be great. But I do think the involvement in the opportunity to bring kind of these technologies that are been there. And again, I mean, we can say the GE product we use is they acquired it from my father's team in 2012. I mean, we're 13 years, 14 years after they acquired it. I mean, these are really life-saving technologies. So I think the more access that more of these clinics are providing the ultrasound on top of the mammography will be very important for women of age. But also I'm very encouraged and I'm hopeful that these younger women are really hand raising. I do a lot of and you'll probably see it at your event, because I'm super encouraged to see the results on, you'll have to I'll follow up with you on an email to learn about, the patient questionnaires. But when I've done events here in San Francisco, I'll fill a room with like hundreds of women that are just there to ask questions, and we'll get our doctor on the line and the amount of questions. So there's such a inspiring path that we're seeing with younger people being like caring about their wellness and their health, especially here in San Francisco. But I think it's really kind of catapulting across the US. More people are being conscious of their health on a regular basis. And that brings good questions. That brings preventative medicine. That brings preventative opportunities. And so I'm really excited about where we continue to see, those hard questions. And, and again, it's like, it's your life. So, live it to your best and, ask those uncomfortable questions to your doctor, because you know what? The white coat doesn't mean like they know all. You could really kind of ask them some more harder questions. And I
Yes, definitely.
we're getting encouraged to ask more because we're giving more data to kind of learn about things. And so that's a good thing. And I think doctors are receptive to asking when you're going to ask good questions. they want to help you better inform yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great information. I'm really encouraged by all of that. Well, this has been such a great conversation with both you, Bob and Brendan. I am so glad to know about Eve Wellness and how it all came to be. And yes, again, when I come to San Francisco, I will definitely come visit you. Bob, is there anything that you would like to leave us with before we wrap up today?
No, I think to applaud you, actually, it's the whole awareness. I mean, there's a lot of how can we get the right message out to the right people, and you're trying to do that from a discovery standpoint, diagnostics, all the way to treatment. I mean, the other set, which I've seen, the need for a navigator to help women or anybody with breast cancer go through this is so. I mean, that's almost disheartening to go through all that stuff once you know it. And to get away from the fear of if I screen, I'm going to get breast cancer, or not the radiation, but if I screen, do I really want to know if I want breast cancer? Because it's the other aspect, that the economic pitfalls of being treated, especially with and without insurance, or what am I going to do with my family? How am I going to get, so that the other aspect, which I can appreciate, I can understand, it's heartfelt, but that needs so much once you know it.
I always say that if the cancer's there, it's going to be there whether you look or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what about you, Brendan?
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the things that I always try to encourage women is like, look, if you are doing your screening mammography, which is great, look at your report. Start really asking the density. Density to me is the biggest risk factor for women of screening age. And for the younger women, know that there's options out there. Know that you can get, screening done. And it might be, just looking around. If you're not in the San Francisco Bay Area, you can look around for other ways to do screening, ultrasound that's out there. Look and look and look. So I think that's the key thing is, for me, it's density, and it's really understanding what the A, B, C, and D means. And if you are in certain categories, really ask those hard questions to your doctor. Know that, that's kind of, to me, like, I'm always trying to encourage, like, I'll ask women to pull up their charts in front of me. I'm like, let's look at it right now, to good friends of mine. And they'll be like, oh, I'm a category C. I'm like, what does that mean? I'm like, let's start talking about it. So again, thank you again, because really these conversations help so many women, and it helps them know that there's resources available. And I'll tell you, it's something that I've realized, I understand now what my father has gone through for 30 years and trying to push forward stuff. We're doing great work, all of us together. And it's just, the more and more we just keep talking, because you said it right away. Like, women tell their friends, and they're the biggest, the most positive gossipers we can imagine for these things. So the more that we get women talking about density, we get women talking about their, maybe we almost have to like make your ABCDs like a very cool thing or something, like put some coolness behind it. So, understand like it's more normal to talk about density instead of not knowing. So I think that's what I'm really, encouraged.
Yeah, I'm sure all of my friends on Facebook are really sick and tired of me talking about breast cancer and breast cancer, but I don't care. I'm going to put it out there anyway. Well,
I talk about it all the time. And people are like, I wear this pin every day. So I'll let you I wear this pin every day. So it starts a conversation with somebody at the local restaurant or something like that. So it's an idea that you don't, let's continue to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the more impact we will have.
Can I do one off the record?
Okay.
Okay. So so we're trying to figure out ultrasound, and there's nipple shadow, right? Nipple shadow, because if you don't direct it.
Right.
So So I'm working with the radiologist, and she said, I just went to Frederick's and I got a new bra, and they gave me a standoff, like an oil to put over my nipple. And we had been testing because ultrasound, you need to get through, you need to have some sort of contact lotion, water, oil.
Right.
And so we're at a dinner. Brendan's with, I think, WAMU or Washington at that time, or no, maybe Chase. So we're at a dinner down in Pebble Beach at a golf tournament, AT&T golf tournament, and Brendan invites me to come down for dinner. So I come down, and so husbands are there with us, wives with spouses, husbands at about table of 8, and they said, well, what do you work on? And I said, interesting you asked that. I said, I just made a call down here in Monterey with my radiologist. And so let me show you what we worked on. So I pulled out, I said, we're trying to figure out nipple shadow. and everybody kind of said, who is this guy? But
I'm sure.
solved the nipple shadow problem.
It's a family business.
So
family business.
Brendan was ducking under the table. Yeah.
It's like embarrassing. Well, you two are such a joy, and I just really appreciate your joining me on this episode. I'm sure this is going to be well received. And also, I will put Eve Wellness information in the show notes, but also on my website, because I do curate resources for people. So thank you again, gentlemen. I really appreciate everything you've done. And to my audience, thank you for joining us again on this episode of Test Those Breasts, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.